Get ready to uncover how schools manipulate students' thoughts, stifle their potential, and how politicians steal money in the future of America from kids. Welcome to the JB Show.
Hello everyone, this is the Operation Anti-Indoctrination podcast. I'm your host JB. Producer Brooke's not here with us today, but it's alright. I'm all alone, but it's fine. We got a fun, epic, amazing show for you today. Talking about all the recent stories, going to be giving a little bit of history on the school system, and then also talking about what needs to be done, how we tackle this school problem, which has been really destroying our country for the last few decades, and really we've been seeing quite the ramping up of that over the last few months. So, Producer Brooke's not here today, or she's gonna still be here. We got another episode coming up pretty soon, an animated episode that's going to be very, very epic. We've poured many, many hours into it, so I'd appreciate it if you'd go watch that one as well. And let's get into it. So, we have the first story, Confucius Institutes. Now, I don't know if you've watched any of our older episodes or you know what they are because of other sources, but the Confucius Institutes in our schools and universities are basically a Chinese infiltration of our academia, of our education system, and of our schooling. Not good. Really not good. So, what we've been having is we have been having more and more and more until recently, over the last few years, it's actually been starting to decrease. The Confucius Institutes have been starting to close. They are Chinese propaganda. They have teachers which are handpicked by the Chinese Communist Party. They serve China, not America. They are for China, not America. They are not, they have no allegiance to the United States, which is not good when you're teaching our future generations, if you know what I'm saying. So these Confucius Institutes have been horrible for America. We have Chinese sympathizers. We have people that would prefer the Chinese government over our own. We have people that love China that have no idea about their horrible atrocities, about their organ harvesting, their concentration camps, all that fun stuff. And we have Confucius Institutes in very, very prominent universities like Columbia University. I know, shocker, if you've been watching this show, you know Columbia is a real special university. It's lots of fun. It's great. And then Stanford University, as well as many, many others we have in public schools, and their whole propaganda apparatus, China's propaganda apparatus, has been really disseminated across all public schools and all universities. If you look at the coursework they're giving us in, well, even middle and high school, where you're having literally pro-China propaganda. I'm having pro-China propaganda in middle school and high school, if you can believe it, where we're being told that the party's good, the country is good, that socialism is good, their economic model is somehow somehow getting the people out of poverty. It's uplifting the nation to rival the world, and China's gonna take over the world because it's so wonderful, right? And we're being told that Mao was great. Actually, that's what I've been told. You can believe that. We've been told that the Great Leap Forward was some wonderful success. It worked. Why not, right? So the Confucius Institutes are a big, big problem. Not good. Not good, right? So, thankfully, just this year alone, in 2020, 58 of them have closed. That's very, very good news. And that's, by the way, up from 36 last year, which is up from, I think, 4 in 2018 and then 2 before that. So it was really not happening until the last few years when finally these places started closing, because people finally started realizing, hey, China might be a little bit of an adversary here. All right. This is fun. This is good fun. So, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of, I guess it's like reverse racism or something that's been happening in America, but now, this is really special. We have a student group at New York University, NYU, pretty famous university, right? Called the Black Violets. And they are calling for segregated dormitories, for black people, so that they can be away from those evil whites, I guess. I don't, tell you the truth, I have no idea why. But, it's interesting, when you're so not racist that, you become a segregationist or whatever. This is interesting stuff here. We have a statement from their organization saying that, quote, "We, members of the Black student body, demand that NYU implement Black student housing on campus in the vein of themed engagement floors across first-year and upperclassmen residence halls." There you go. By the way, I think that's a little bit sexist there, calling it upperclassmen residence. I think that's a little bit sexist, if you know what I'm saying, But anyway, on a more serious note, this could have been written in 1940. This is real. This is special. Where you have now blacks want to be separated from the whites. Interesting how that has all shifted, and interesting how you think we uphold these people, we lift these people up like Martin Luther King Jr. for their greatness and Malcolm X, but really, we're not anywhere close to what they would have wanted to. You think Martin Luther King Jr. would have liked this? I think that's pretty rhetorical, but that's a really nice story. School is just depressing, and might I add that, according to the Federalist Papers, quote, in 2019, the National Association of Scholars studied 173 universities and found that almost half have segregated residence halls, and almost 3/4 have segregated graduation ceremonies. So, unquote. So segregation, it's back, It's back. It's here. It's now. We're doing this, Sure, why not? Let's have segregation. That's a wonderful idea. Don't take that out of context. Anyway, this is all part of a growing trend. The Confucius Institutes, these segregated dorms, this sort of ethno-nationalism that we have here. It's all part of a growing trend of communism in colleges, of Marxism in colleges. Even though communism, look, I'm not gonna recite the same talking points of 100 million people killed and so on. We've all heard that, but really, it's incredibly diametrical. It's diametrically opposed to human nature, more communism, and this lofty utopian idea of a great system where we all work for the common good and we own the means of production as workers and as common citizens, and the government redistributes everything. It's antithetical to human nature. It will never, ever happen. And I think, honestly, that should be pretty self-explanatory at this point. But right now, you have schools that are on the side. They are openly siding with the Marxists, with the communists that want to destroy America. America, this is like, I don't know how to put this, but why would you? Don't destroy America. That's all I can say. This is my home. This is my place. Please don't destroy it. Please don't turn this into your horrible communist, quote-unquote, utopia, which will never work. Stop destroying America. Don't destroy my home. Why would you risk that when it's failed over and over and over again? Why would you risk destroying America, which is the last true place of freedom, in my opinion, of real freedom? Anyway. Why would you risk destroying this? Please, please don't, guys. This is insane. We have communism in colleges. We have, classes like gender studies, classes that are really just a facade for their great communist revolution. This radical feminism, militant anarchism, all that fun stuff. Which, speaking of communism, let's get into our history here. The school system was actually built by a whole lot of communists, if you can believe it. Now, the school system, if you did not know, originated in the 1800s. This is in America, of course, where you had a large coalition, and we've talked about this before. You had Horace Mann and the Unitarian Christians. You had the anti-Catholics and the Protestants. You had the Hegelians, the sort of proto-communists, the prototype communists, the pantheists. All these groups that came together for the lofty, wonderful, utopian concept of public school, where we'd all get an education, all have a great time, have the utopia where we've indoctrinating and dumbed down kids. But one group that I haven't talked about much, and I really should have, I'm a little a little disappointed in myself that it's taken this long, were the Owenites. Are you familiar with the Owenites? You see, we seem to think, we have this illusion that modern communism and socialism goes back to Karl Marx and Engels, right? The Communist Manifesto, books, Das Kapital, that fun stuff, the Paris Commune. That was the start of communism as we know it today. But that's actually not true. Modern communism started with a guy named Robert Owen. And Robert Owen, he lived from 1771 to 1858. And he was a British manufacturer and philanthropist. He was probably one of the original philanthropists, to be honest. And he had this great idea of utopianism. He was presumably influenced by philosophers like Plato, like Hegel, Rousseau, all these people. And he was really into the utopian communist idea. So, in 1925, Robert Owen and his son, Robert Dale Owen, come to America to start a utopian colony in America in 1825. 1825! This isn't 2015. And it started in the town of New Harmony, Indiana. So, this is, pretty out west for the time, where you have these group of a few thousand guys and women, I guess, who are starting this great communist utopia. It's gonna be wonderful. It's gonna be the utopia to end all utopias, and then the whole world's gonna adopt it, and everyone lives happily ever after, right? Well, didn't go so well. See, they had probably assumed that everyone would be so altruistic and wonderful, but no. So it failed after a couple years. It failed in, I think, 1828. I think that's when it was dissolved. So Robert Owen and his son Robert Dale Owen and all their buddies, they got together, presumably in a little cabin somewhere, and said, "Alrighty, what did we do wrong? What?" Because obviously utopianism is possible. Obviously it's not, antithetical to human nature. So what did we do wrong here? Let's think. All right. Well, these people were educated wrong, right? They just weren't educated correctly. See, what we need now is a system of mass public schooling in order to socialize and collectivize the kids. So what they called for was essentially boarding schools, where the kids would all wear the same stuff, sleep in the same rooms. They would be separated from their parents, separated from any cultural influences, from any societal influences, so they could be raised into little communists. This was a real idea. But obviously there was a problem, which was public school did not exist yet. So they had to join forces with all the other groups calling for them, all these social reformers, to get public school through. Now I'm gonna quote from Samuel Blumenfeld. This guy, he studied the Owenites quite a bit. He says, quote, "Owen's son, Robert Dale Owen, and feminist Frances Wright set up headquarters in New York, helped organize the Working Men's Party as a front for the Owenite ideas, published a radical weekly paper called the Free Enquirer, and lectured widely on socialism and national education," unquote. Now, you might be asking, how do we know this? How on earth could you know all this when they were presumably doing this rather tacitly and secretly? Well, you have one of their members who, after all this, after they set up these secret little communist societies to promote public school in New York, you have one of their people who defected. He converted to Catholicism. This guy's name was Orestes Brownson. He converted to Catholicism from this Unitarianism and this Utopianism, which is a religion in and of itself. He converted to it and gave his account of it. Now, what I'm going to read you is a stunning account of this, which happened in the 1830s, if you can believe it. This is according to Orestes Brownson. Quote, "But the more immediate work was to get our system of schools adopted. To this end, it was proposed to organize the whole Union secretly, very much on the plan of the Carbonari of Europe, of whom at that time I knew nothing. The members of this secret society were to avail themselves all the means in their power, each in his own locality to form public opinion in favor of education by the state at the public expense, and to get such men elected to the legislatures as would be likely to favor our purposes. How far the secret organization extended, I do not know, but I do know that a considerable portion of the state of New York was organized, for I myself was one of the agents for organizing it." Unquote. How about that? So we have, in the 1830s, secret communist societies funded by this rich Owenite philanthropist Robert Owen and his son Robert Dale Owen to promote public school in order to turn kids into little communists. Now, these effects were subdued for quite a long time because the American people were so opposed to any notion of communism or their atheism and all that stuff. But you started seeing it really starting in the 1950s with Trojan horses like sex education, and then later on you had gender studies. In the 60s, you really started to see a lot of this in schools. And then as you continue it, it's only gotten worse to the point where they openly promote Maoism, which has to be the worst communism we have ever seen, if you can believe it. Now, that's quite a timeline, if I do say so myself. All right, we got quite a few minutes left here, so I'd like to talk about something else. So, yeah, no notes for that. We're just relaxing, relaxing, just like to have a little conversation. So, I've been analyzing, you could say, the people who have tried to reform the school system, the people that have tried to make a meaningful change in order to better America through education, whether it's getting the government out, reforming the system, abolishing the system, all these people, all these ideas, and all these people, like, I'll list some names: Rudolf Flesch, John Holt, Charlotte Iserbyt, John Taylor Gatto, Samuel Blumenfeld, lots of other people who have tried with all they've got to reform the system somehow. And they all had some things in common, which I hope was the reason that they failed. First of all, they were all pretty old. They weren't exactly in their prime, you could say. They were all probably post 50s when they started getting into this. So that's an observation, right? And I'm obviously I'm a teenager. I'm a lot younger than that for now. Also, they were part of the Christian right, you could say. Someone probably called them far right, I guess. And that's not how I'm going to portray myself, right? I'm going to try to attack schools from a much more secular point of view, even if I do believe in God and all that. I'm going to try to attack schools from a much more secular, a much more relatable kind of perspective, instead of saying that they are instruments of Satan, which they may be, but we don't need to talk about that. Thirdly, they tried to get the parents to wake up. Now, in fairness, people like John Taylor Gatto and Samuel Blumenfeld woke up a lot of parents. You have the homeschooling revolution to the point where now you have millions and millions of kids that are being homeschooled. So that's good. That's very good, right? But it's not enough. That's not enough to uproot the system. That's not enough to start real change, which we need if America is to survive. So I've been, how would I be any different than that, right? Well, what has to happen is we need to appeal to the kids, because generally when you get, I'm kind of making an assumption here, but I'm going to assume that generally in most cases, when people get out of public school, they never really want to think about it again. It's done. They're done. It's over, right? They're moving on with their life. They're getting on into the real world. So they're done with public school. Never really need to think about it all that much again. So how about, instead of appealing to the parents, we appeal to the kids? Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Turning Point USA. I'm not a huge fan of Turning Point, but they're basically a young, conservative, student, free market. That's how they portray themselves. Basically that kind of organization. I'm not a huge fan of theirs. I think they do a lot of stuff wrong. I think their marketing is pretty terrible. But their success has been interesting, shall we say. So, we need something like that in order to really wake kids up, wake the people that are being abused by the system up, in order to get real change going. Now, what do they need to do? Well, John Taylor Gatto, who was kind of my inspiration in all of this, proposed something in his later years called the Bartleby Project. I don't quite remember what it was named after, so don't ask me there, but it was called the Bartleby Project. And the idea of this was to have every kid in America write, "I would prefer not to take your test" on every single standardized test that they get. And this would basically cripple the system. This would stop the system's mass data collection, this mass crazy standardized testing, which is destroying our society, causing endless hours of tears and of anguish, because it would basically choke the system from the inside out. Well, that was an interesting idea. Now, obviously, John Taylor Gatto, he was very old by the time he proposed this, so he couldn't really do a whole lot, and he was trying to get to the parents. Again, I would love to wake up the parents, but that hasn't worked. That's not what works. Historically, by looking at all the people that have tried to fix the system by appealing to parents, it hasn't worked. And also, I don't want to portray the school system as a conservative versus liberal issue, because it's not really. But there are a lot. It is in a way a traditional issue where you go back to the traditional way of education, and there is also a rising tide in Generation Z of traditionalists, of social conservatives who want, like, the 1950s back. You know, maybe we have the racism and all that, but the 1950s back, where you have communities, where you have more localized education, all that. So that could be interesting, and polls do show that 14% of Generation Z people identify as conservative. So they would probably be more inclined to, to want this traditional education. And in order to do that, you have to tear down the school system. You have to tear down this mass evil system. That's pretty interesting stuff, I thought. But I think the key to all this is the kids, because we've tried appealing to the parents for 70 years now, basically ever since people like Rudolf Flesch, and it has not worked. It's been an abysmal failure, apart from certain isolated cases. So we need something new. And honestly, it's going to be a very populist sort of approach, which, could be good or bad. In this case, hopefully it'll be good. And hopefully that's the way to destroy the system, is to have and bring back traditional education, American culture. The American idea is to tear down the system tear down this horrible system which is destroying us from the inside. Could be interesting. But that's just my thinking aloud there, my 2 cents on the school issue and how we move forward. So I think that's going to be about it for today. If you do have any questions, you could email me, jbsoulshow@gmail.com. If you are on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. If you're on Libsyn or YouTube, please do share the video. Spotify, SoundCloud, Radio Public, Google Play, that's all. Everything we're on there. It's been an interesting year we're coming up on doing this show. It's been very, very cool. I've learned so much. But for today, that is going to be it. So, until next time, I have been your host, JB. Goodbye.